Hello everybody, today I get to talk to you about Thor Ragnarok. This movie was directed by Taika Waititi, a director that I honestly hadn't heard of before I saw Hunt for the Wilder People. And that movie has really grown on me over time. I really enjoy that movie. I love the awkward, Ari style of comedy that Taika brings. And especially one thing that I loved about Hunt for the Wilder People is that despite it being a very, very funny comedy, it had its heart and emotions in the right place, and from there I became a Taika Waititi fan. And although I haven't seen What We Do in the Shadows or Boy or any of those films, I was really excited to see Thor Ragnarok, so I'm excited to also tell you my thoughts on the film. First of all, of course, it goes without saying that I'm a huge fan of Marvel movies, and that although I didn't love the Thor franchise, and I would say it's my least favorite franchise, this film included, I did enjoy the first Thor, and I think the second Thor was disposable superhero fun. And I think the third Thor, and this should come as no surprise, is definitely the best Thor to date. Now, I am, of course, talking about Thor Ragnarok. One of the things I love about this film is how they got Thor right. Now, it isn't exactly uniform with the other kinds of Thor that we've seen, but for this film, the change in tone really, really works. And the one thing that I always, I think irked people, and myself included, as I began to see that as a trend in the Thor movies, was that they just take themselves way too seriously. For a film about Norse mythology and a god and gods and lightning and thunder and all of those things and all the fantasy that goes in with that, I think the movie was going for a far more heavy-handed kind of Lord of the Rings type seriousness approach to the film, to its franchise basically, which really feels unnecessary after a while, and it kind of just begins to feel like more of the same. So I was so happy when it was announced that Taika Waititi would be on board for this film, because I knew that would be invigorating the film with a far more lighthearted and comedic sense. And in this film, Thor Ragnarok, that direction choice really pays off, and you see this really much more lighthearted and ultimately fun side of Thor that we'd been waiting to see for these past two films, but never got a chance to really enjoy or see. And what I ultimately liked about Thor Ragnarok the most is that it feels like reading a comic book. And that's basically what you want from these films, is that you want it to feel like a comic book, because that's what they're based off of, and it feels very true to its source material. That said, I love experimenting with things, and I think that Taika Waititi did experiment with it while staying true to the source material. I think that, even though Thor is, we can stay, true to the source material and keep all the elements that make him exactly what the fans want him to be, and keep all those fantasy elements. I think that Taika's light-hearted and kind of fun comedic approach at the end of the day really enriched this movie and gave it a sort of new flavor, new flair that I really enjoyed. Just by the visuals alone and the special effects and everything in this film, I loved it. I mean, Thor Ragnarok is really a visual splendor. It's a sight to behold. They really amp up the color in this film, which I love, because Marvel movies have been known to, lack color, and I agree that they require a little bit more pop since they come from superhero movies. And you can go back and see my Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 review as well, because I feel like these two films draw a lot of comparisons. Now, for me personally, Thor Ragnarok is the better film, but before I get into the more specific criticisms about my personal kind of unpopular opinion, because I know how many of you guys love Thor Ragnarok, which I did as well, but I still think Guardians Volume 2 is the better film. I do want to draw some parallels between the two films in terms of visual style, and why I think Thor Ragnarok actually outdoes Guardians Volume 2 in terms of visual style. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, it has a very sci-fi rich imagery, and so does Thor Ragnarok. Both have very colorful imagery, and they really use that to their advantage. But I think that Taika Waititi went a step above James Gunn in that he was able to use that kind of visual style that's kind of similar to Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's very expansive. There's obviously the difference between sci-fi and fantasy, but I think they're both very expansive, colorful, kind of similar. But I still do think that Taika Waititi went the extra step and made that visual style applicable to his own personal style, which is comedy. Especially with the scenes with the Grandmaster and all those scenes, you could see that he was using those same special effects, state of the art special effects with the same type of scale, but using them to craft his own style in Thor Ragnarok, which I really liked. Is that Taika Waititi knew how to use basically this huge scale he's gotten. You have Marvel and all these amazing special effects artists, and make it his own and make it his own personal thing, which I feel that James Gunn slightly struggles with, is that he doesn't know how to turn his own style and bring it to the Marvel franchise comparatively. I mean, he does a great job of bringing his own visual style too, but I think that Taika does a better job of it, having seen Thor Ragnarok. So, on just a visual basis alone, you get a lot out of Thor Ragnarok. There's some lovely landscapes, just great fantasy visual style, and Taika makes it his own, and he really owns it, and I really enjoyed that aspect of Thor Ragnarok as well. The actors and characters in this film are, of course, as well phenomenal. Chris Hemsworth really shows that the guy has comedic chops, and think of what you will of that film, but I think he showed a little bit of that in the Ghostbusters remake that came out last year. But I think he really expands that in Thor Ragnarok and really shows what he has in terms of comedic chops, and he has quite a bit to show. Honestly, he was one of my favorite parts of the film, and also, you have Tom Hiddleston also showing his comedic chops, and I honestly think that they finally got both of these characters right, and the comedic lightheartedness really helped to enrich that experience of getting those characters right, bringing them to a more lighthearted, fun kind of zone, instead of being the heavy-handed, very dark fantasy style that Kenneth Branagh, and as well as the director of the Thor: The Dark World, whose name I don't remember, that they brought. They brought a very heavy-handed style, but Taika, removes all that baggage and makes the film very fun, very lighthearted. In addition, you have, people like Jeff Goldblum who give very great supporting turns, as well as Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie. I think she was a surprise to me. I didn't really see her character do much in the film. I wish I'd seen more, I would say, actually. In fact, it was like almost like a tease, like I wanted to see more because she was doing so well. But I think she still caught me by surprise, and she did a really great acting turn. I think some of her comedic parts were funny. And Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk was really good, the motion capture. I don't know how much of it's motion capture, how much is special effects. There's always that debate about how much of the motion capture is actually the actor. But I think overall I enjoyed the character of Hulk. I liked the approach they went with him without spoiling anything. And Mark Ruffalo as an actor, even when he's not the Hulk, I think he brings something unique to the table. And as an Avenger, he brings something unique in every film for me. So I've kind of grown to like Mark Ruffalo as an Avenger, as an actor, and as a character. So I really liked how the film came together. And one of the standout actors, in fact, was Taika Waititi himself, who plays this character in this film that I think you guys will really enjoy. So the characters and actors in this film were just phenomenal. I think they really fit in well with the comedic approach with Taika. You could tell there was synergy between the actors and the director, and that they both understood each other, and the film comes together in a way that really works. But there are things that don't quite work. The biggest qualm with this movie is actually a lack of character development and emotion in the film. Now, before I go into that, I want to let you know that there's a little bit of a trade-off in this film where you get some really good pacing and a really good screenplay. This movie never feels heavy despite it being more than 2 hours long. And it never feels like it's dragging because the pacing is just so great, and Taika keeps it moving at a really good pace. You get a lot of action, you get a lot of comedy. It feels lighthearted, it feels fun. But what you kind of lose with that is the emotion and character development that I've kind of come to expect from a Taika Waititi film, having seen Hunt for the Wilderpeople. That movie is a little bit slower, but the emotion it brings, I think, is something really interesting. The character development and the character interplay that Hunt for the Wilderpeople brought was just missing completely in Thor Ragnarok, and it kind of bummed me out, honestly, because I wanted to see this new, fresh Thor universe have some new emotion. And here's when I come to the comparison between, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and Thor Ragnarok. Now, most people are going to disagree with me probably because a lot more people enjoyed Thor Ragnarok more. But honestly, my criticism is that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 brings that emotion and brings out that character development, and I think James Gunn does a good job of keeping the focus on the characters, while Taika kind of got caught up in the action and the comedy and kind of forgot to give these actors any real character. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like what they're doing with the characters in terms of their personalities and some of their little characteristics, but it feels like the movie just gets too quickly caught up in the action and the plot than to, give time for the characters to really bud or grow or even have time with each other. Now, I'm not asking necessarily for scenes where two characters sit down and have a long-handed conversation, but in some way or another there wasn't enough emotion in places where I felt like there needed to be. There was a lot of things about siblings in this movie. I felt like there was a lack of emotion there, a lack of character development. And the movie is moving at a train speed, really fun and everything, but it feels like that emotion has just been stripped away from the script. And that really affected the quality of the film for me personally. I think that there was more emotional and character development type things to happen in this film, and it just wasn't there in the script, or maybe it was taken away to keep the film's pacing the way it is. And as I said, it's a little bit of a trade-off, because you would have gotten a slower pace, like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which kind of comes to a screeching halt now and then, had you put that emotion in Thor Ragnarok. But I feel like it really hurt the film in the long run, was keeping that emotion away. And knowing that Taika Waititi is behind the camera, and I know that he can balance that mix, it disappointed me personally not to see that in the film. So I think that really hurted the quality of the film. That said, again, it's a fun movie. I'm not saying it's not. It's just lacking the amount of character development and emotion that seemed fitting for these characters and the situations that they were going through. So that was one of my biggest criticisms, and honestly, it kind of dragged the movie down for me a little bit. Because when you take that away from a film, especially a superhero film, with the plethora of superhero films that we already get, it's ultimately, you have to bring something that differentiates you from the rest. And although Thor Ragnarok has elements to differentiate itself, you have this new fresh take on Thor, this comedic style, this awkwardness in all the comedy, all these great actors, this great visual kind of 80s fantasy style. It just isn't enough to do that, since everyone is technically doing something revolutionary in terms of that. But I think it's the emotion that ultimately differentiates these superhero films, and all of them bring different kinds of emotions based on their situation. But I felt that Thor Ragnarok was just missing that completely somewhere along the line, and it affected my personal viewing experience of the film. So I feel like this movie needed more of an emotional packaged punch, and it just was missing that. Don't get me wrong, guys, it is a fun film. You get a great cast of characters, a great cast of actors playing those characters. You have this great director who's bringing some type of unique style, making it his own. But ultimately, it was lacking that kind of emotional character development angle. I enjoyed the villain too, Cate Blanchett, who plays Hela. Again, I feel like there could have been some more emotion or character development within her character, but she was a fun character. She has really good lines. She has some awesome action sequences. She's very menacing. She did a good job. But again, it was just missing that element of character development / emotion. But I don't want to come off as negative on the film. I am actually very positive on it. I really did enjoy the movie. It's a great Marvel movie, definitely the best of all 3 Thor movies. They really understood the character, and you can, as I said, you can feel that the actors and the director really understand each other and understand what they want to be in the movie, and it pays off, and that shows up in this film. It's very fast paced. It moves as a train, like I said, and it's really fun to see in the theater, guys. It's something that you can really enjoy. It feels like you're reading a comic book, and I came out enjoying the movie. Not that it was amazing, because I feel like this movie is going to ultimately seem a little bit forgettable by the end of the day. Everyone will remember it as the best Thor movie, as this unique comedic movie, but ultimately it brings nothing new from a narrative point of view, especially because of that lack of character development of emotion. It does do a lot to further the plot for Thor. I mean, there's a lot of interesting plot points in this film that change things for Thor without giving any spoilers, but ultimately there's nothing new in the narrative. Overall, good though. I enjoyed it. It's a fun movie, and I think you guys will have fun too. Just wish it had brought a little bit more of that character development, emotion, to really, give it a little bit of a base, give it a little bit of a ground to have the fun that it's having. But in general, guys, I'm going to give this movie a B. It's really on the high end of the B. It's almost a B+. So go and check it out, guys. It's a fun movie, and hope you guys watch more of my videos. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all of those things. I am going to be posting tons of new reviews since I've been so inactive on the channel. I have lots of reviews to get to you guys. So thanks for watching.